Hello, everyone. First and foremost, I would like to welcome Superintendent Matt Wayne and Mayor London Breed. Thank you guys so much for having me. My name is Ariel Ciara Chen, and I am the senior class president. It is my pleasure to welcome all attendees to Abraham Lincoln High School as we host this SF Parent Coalition Forum on the state of San Francisco's public schools. On behalf of the Lincoln community and the student body, I would like to thank everyone for gathering here today at our school. I truly love this school and the experiences that have shaped me here. Originally, I started here during the pandemic year of 2020 to 2021, where I was elected to be ambassador. After 4 years, I worked my way up and became class president. Through this school, I have met many great people and created many long-lasting friendships. It helped me develop my communication and leadership skills to actualize my dream of becoming a successful entrepreneur. After my family picked up everything from Taishan, China, to immigrate to America when I was only 4.5 years old. With that being said, there are many improvements that need to be made here at Lincoln and SFUSD as a whole. For example, we need funding improvement upon these old buildings, as many of them are falling apart, and have actual staff teaching classes. Sadly enough, we still have several opening positions at the school, so hopefully teachers can get paid more, and then we can have them work or apply to work here. Finally, please welcome Yvette Edwards, Cliff Yee, and Meredith Dalton, the co-founders of San Francisco Parent Coalition, who are hosting this event. Thank you guys so much for having me.
Thank you, Ariel. Good evening. I'm Yvette Edwards, co-founder and board member of San Francisco Parent Coalition and a mom of 2 children currently in SFUSD. For those of you who are new to us, San Francisco Parent Coalition is a parent-led, nonprofit organization that centers the needs of children and youth in San Francisco public schools by bringing together a diverse network of parents and caregivers to advocate for a thriving, equitable school system. We envision a future where San Francisco is one of the best cities in the country, if not the best city in the country, and youth of all races, socioeconomic backgrounds, and abilities can thrive. A city where children can grow up and get an excellent public school education from each and every school within this district, where their educational opportunities include having access to everything they can dream of for their futures, where they can feel safe and accepted, and where they can envision a future for themselves, allowing them to pursue their passions and dreams to the fullest. We now reach and engage thousands of families from over 110 SFUSD schools, and we also regularly engage teachers, educators, students, administrators, staff, and community members. Thank you all for being here tonight. The work to make SFUSD more student-centered would not be possible without all of you. SF Parents got started during 2020 when families and children and educators felt their voices weren't being heard during a time of prolonged school closures amidst the pandemic. Since then, we've had so many wins for children and families. Most notably, we got schools reopened when SFUSD was closed longer than any major urban district across the country. We advocated for SFUSD to replace its outdated literacy curriculum that was failing too many of our students. And we also got SFUSD to speed up its timeline to fix the challenged K-8 math program. We're effective because we listen to community. We are transparent, and we work to share critical information widely to make sure it reaches as many families as possible, especially families who may not have the time to attend meetings like these or the other many meetings that go on for a very long time. We educate the community on what is happening within our public schools, and we elevate and uplift students, members, to get involved at their school sites or on SFUSD committees where they can speak for themselves and be sure their voices are heard and that those of their children are heard. We are so proud to be here tonight and are so very excited for all of you being here with us. This is really about community coming together to learn, to hear more about what is happening within our district, so that as always, everyone has access to the information they will need to make informed decisions for their children and their educational futures. So now, I will turn it over to my fellow co-founder and board member, Cliff Yee, who will be giving an overview of tonight's events and discussing community norms. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Adjust this a little bit. Hi, everyone. My name is Cliff Yee, and I'm a co-founder and a board member of SF Parents. I am also a proud product of SFUSD and currently have 2 kids within the district as well. As someone with a background in leadership development and youth development, I'm really excited for this important opportunity to come together as curious and engaged members of the larger community to listen to our panelists about the current state of SFUSD. For tonight's event, we hope you leave with 2 outcomes. First is an increased understanding of how well SFUSD is doing to close the gap regarding the budget, achieving academic excellence and equity. Secondly, an increased clarity on the future of SFUSD, including their priority areas. Similar to being part of a community, I want to acknowledge that we come here with different experiences and perspectives regarding the current state of SFUSD and our vision for a SFUSD where every student thrives. So with that said, here are a couple of community norms, because we are also at Lincoln High School. We like to request each of us embody tonight. And so the first community norm is acknowledging that we all have strong opinions about the district. My request, our request, is to replace judgment with curiosity. Secondly is to be respectful, understanding that looks and feels different depending on what respect means to you and your culture. It's okay to have a different perspective, but how might we challenge an idea and not the person? Lastly, the San Francisco Parent Coalition is an advocacy organization, and we want to hear from you on how we can keep pushing SFUSD to be a thriving, equitable school district where every student can meet their full potential. In your programs that you have in front of you, granted it's really dark right now, you'll find our contact information to follow up with us. Thank you, and it's my pleasure to introduce our Executive Director and co-founder, Meredith Dodson.
Thank you, Cliff and Yvette. Hello, everyone. I'm Meredith Dodson, co-founder and executive director of San Francisco Parent Coalition. I'm humbled and honored to be here tonight and each and every day that I get to lead this organization of incredibly passionate families who care about nothing more than making sure their kids and our city's kids have everything they need to thrive in our schools. Before our program gets started, I want to thank each and every one of you, students, families, teachers, and community who came out tonight for this event. And by submitting your questions in advance, of which we received over 200, we were able to develop a strong program, including an engaging panel, followed by some direct question and answer. Before we begin, we just want to briefly recognize some folks in the room and to thank them for joining us and coming out to be here in support of public school families, teachers, and students. We have California Department of Education Deputy Superintendent Mary Nicely here with us tonight. Thank you for joining us all the way from Sacramento. We have several city elected officials in the audience. We have Supervisor Engardio. We're actually in his district, and we appreciate his focus on math. We have Public Defender Manu Roju. And we have many SFUSD leadership and staff. We saw a bunch, I can't really see into the audience right now, but we saw some teachers and other staff come through. We appreciate you all for being here. And our Board of Education, we saw Commissioner Jenny Lamb come through. She's also a parent of a high school student at Lincoln. So we're really glad that she's here, and we really appreciate her leadership on the Board of Education, especially through a challenging time for the board last year. Really helped she brought in a nationally renowned expert for getting school boards to be more effective leaders for our kids. And I believe Commissioner Matamati is on her way as well. And last but definitely not least, the largest appreciation for those who made this event possible, which is the Lincoln High School staff, Principal Manalang, Vice Principal Jordan Lowy, Teacher Elaine Walenta, a bunch of student tech workers who are making all of the lighting possible. Thank you. And PTSA President Rex Ridgway. Also from our SF Parent Coalition team, this would not have been possible without Giovanna Soto and Nicole Gangitano, and many volunteers and board members who are here helping tonight. So, okay, a lot of acknowledgements, but it's time to begin the program. You guys are here for the speakers who are here. Before we have the panel come up to stage, we're first going to hear a brief overview from our state representative, Phil Ting, on the outlook of state funding for public education. So Assemblymember Ting is a longtime public school parent. He's currently the budget chair, and he supported our efforts to reopen schools during the pandemic. So please give Assembly Budget Chair Phil Ting a warm welcome to the stage for his overview.
Thanks, Meredith. Thank you also Cliff, Yvette, and all the San Francisco Parent Coalition members. It's just great to be with you here tonight. As Meredith said, I'm a longtime public school parent, and who also happens to chair the Assembly Budget Committee. So I get to see very much the ins and outs of what happens around state funding and education. But I also feel your pain as a San Francisco public school parent and really writing the ups and downs of being a public school parent and watching my kids experience year in and year out. I can think back to all their amazing teachers at their elementary school, middle school experience, whether it was math or whether it was social science. My children were privileged enough to be in the Mandarin immersion program and have really thrived and really enjoyed being part of it. But I've also felt the downs, especially during COVID when we were doing Zoom school. And in particular, my 8th grader started school this year, and she started 8th grade without a science teacher. Unfortunately, the district had challenges hiring the science teacher. And then also, just a few weeks ago, her Mandarin teacher resigned, leaving a huge void because, as you can all guess, it's very difficult to find a substitute teacher teaching Mandarin. So we were so fortunate. One of our fellow parents has decided to sub and teach the class every couple days, as she also is a teacher in another school. So she's been juggling her teaching schedule with teaching our kids Mandarin. And so I know that these are just a few stories that you hear each and every single day, and I carry that thought with you as we are formulating the budget up in Sacramento. School funding right now is at an all-time high in California, but it simply isn't enough, and I know that we can see that. We're still overcoming learning loss and mental health challenges brought on by COVID to our students, teachers, staff, and administrator, and frankly, everyone's exhausted. And I see that day in and day out, how hard everybody's working, but also how tired they are. And frankly, our children are still recovering from all they went through during that COVID pandemic period. About the only good news I can give you is we've seen a huge jump in state funding. I was able to start going to the legislature in 2012 and 13. And just to give you a context, in 2012 and 13, the SFUSD per pupil funding was $9,479. $9,479, and our enrollment was about 49,000. Today, that funding is $20,227 per pupil at SFUSD. And our enrollment is slightly down, which is also very typical across the board in public schools all around the state at about 44,000. So this increase in funding didn't happen by accident. We have been fighting for it. Just last year in the budget, we fought for a 13% increase in our local control funding formula. And then we followed it up this year with an 8% increase. And we were very intentional with that. That is unrestricted money that goes to every single school district in the state. And in particular, the hope was that that money would reach the classrooms. When I say the classrooms, that it would reach the teachers, it'd reach the classified staff, that it would reach the principals and the nurses and the social workers, the ones who are here each and every single day providing that support network here in schools. And now we know schools are so much more than just what you learn. It's no longer just reading, arithmetic, math. It is, in sciences, it's so much more. You need to make sure you have meals and kids are fed. We don't have enough nurses, but the nurses play a critical role. We don't have enough social workers, but they play such a huge role in making sure that our kids can actually learn. Because we know that if kids go to school hungry, if they go to school with a lot of their challenges, it's very difficult for them to pay attention in the classroom. So that's not all that's happening at the state. We are implementing so many programs that were started and envisioned right here in San Francisco. We are going forward with TK for all. It used to be only 25% of 4-year-olds could get transitional kindergarten. Now we are making sure every 4-year-old will eventually all get transitional kindergarten. But that's not all. Community schools, a concept that started right here in San Francisco. Community schools, which is really about schools being more than just a place where you drop your kids off, that really it's a hub of a community. And so we've been pioneering that concept, and that concept's been so successful, we are rolling it out entirely statewide. But I'll guarantee you, San Francisco Unified will be one of the major beneficiaries of our statewide community schools initiative. More than that, we've pioneered the idea around student wellness, and in particular around behavioral health. So that also is something that we are not just funding San Francisco Unified for, but we are rolling out all around the state. And then lastly, we as voters, we passed the arts funding initiative that we are going to hopefully start seeing in the next couple of years, increased arts funding into each and every single school up and down the state. So let me just be frank, implementing these is not going to be easy. It's easy to talk about all the money coming. It's a huge undertaking for the superintendent, for each of our principals to actually implement each of these programs. I've watched as our school has dealt with how do you have a wellness room, how do you staff it, how do you make sure that there's the room to actually allow students to go there, and what kind of care can they get there? And I'm telling you, it's not perfect, but it's a start. And these are all going to be major challenges as we really start all these programs and get them up and running. However, SFUSD, as has been mentioned, is facing major challenges, and we cannot be business as usual. We need to make very difficult fiscal decisions, which you're going to hear from this panel. We absolutely need to modernize our system. In particular, we have to make sure that our payroll system actually gets modernized. And most importantly, as our 3 founders about the SF Parent Coalition talked about, we need to make sure that each and every day we are focused on our students and their everyday learning experience. It has to be students first. So let me again just thank the superintendent, the teachers, the staff, the administrators, each and every day. I am so honored to be in their presence. I see how hard they work. I'm sure you all do too as parents. When I go into the classrooms, when I go into schools, it's amazing to see all that contribution. I just want to thank them. So can we give all the educators, everybody who have to do anything around San Francisco schools, a huge round of applause. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Assemblymember Ting, for setting that important context for our panel. And now we're about to kick off this panel conversation, so please join me in giving a warm welcome as we invite our incredible panel to the stage. Oh, the lights. As they take their seats, and before I hand things over to our moderator, Hydra Mendoza, I'd like to introduce them all. We will be hearing tonight from Mayor London Breed. Mayor Breed is a native San Franciscan and a product of SFUSD herself, graduating from Galileo High School. Mayor Breed has been an incredible champion for kids, and ever since we first called her office in 2020 to get her help when families were being shut out of the conversation, she was the first official to really listen to parents. Superintendent Dr. Wayne, our no longer new superintendent, who's now been with the district for over a year and a half now. He was previously, He was previously superintendent in Hayward, and prior to that served as executive director of elementary schools for SFUSD, starting out his career in education as a teacher in New York City public schools. We also have Dr. Maria Sue, executive director of DCYF. That is our city's Department of Children, Youth, and Families. And if you don't know a lot about what that is, you'll hear more about it. But it's incredibly important when we think about wrapping around services to support our kids, when you think of after-school programming and all of the extra supports. That is our fearless leader, Dr. Maria Sue, who will tell you more about what the city is doing to support our students. Last but not least, we're so excited to have Hydra Mendoza moderating the panel. Hydra she's steeped in education policy herself. She's the former education advisor to the mayor and also a former 2-term school board president. She also served as the deputy chancellor for the largest school district across the country, New York City Public Schools. So with that, let's hand things over to them.
Thank you
and get
so
our
much,
panel
Meredith.
started. Sure.
Appreciate it. Well, welcome everyone on this lovely Wednesday evening. Thank you to the three of you for being out here tonight. Really important conversation. Being a recovering school board member, this is therapy for me, so I'm glad to be on this side of the conversation than on that side this time. I want to frame our discussion from the lens of each of you individually and the roles that you play, and then what does that look like collectively? Because as San Franciscans, and for all of you that are leading our city, it's really important to think about the impact of our kids and our education system and what it does in the future in terms of healthcare and the current, quite frankly, healthcare, the criminal justice system, workforce development, and our economy, right? So, and it's not just our kids, it's our families, it's our teachers, and it's our community. So regardless, I've had the opportunity to be part of a school board here in San Francisco, and in New York, it was mayoral control. But regardless of the structure that we were under, it's really important that the impact that you have and what you contribute is both aligned and collective, and just thinking about where you each come from, and Mayor Breed, you in particular, we've been working together for many, many years. You used to call me when you were at the African American Cultural Center because you have a 14-year-old that, didn't go to class that day, and what can you do to make sure she goes the next day? And we would have all these discussions around that. And you grew up in San Francisco and you went through our public school system. I went to Wash, so, Mayor Breed and I are on opposite ends here. And so, I want to start with you because I think we have this really fortunate opportunity to link all of your pieces together. So I want to start with you because I want to know what your experience was when you were growing up in SFUSD and in San Francisco, and what that looks like now, and what do you hear and see from our students today?
Well, thank you, Hydra, and I'm really glad to be here to have this very important discussion about the future of our school system in San Francisco in light of so many of the challenges that we've had to deal with, especially after a global pandemic. I'll just kind of take it back. It wasn't that long ago when I was in schools in San Francisco, and I think the biggest difference between then and now is technology, especially things like social media and the sometimes negative roles that they can play in missing out on opportunities to grow and to develop without the technology. We had to go to the library, to go through a card catalog, to find a book, and to do a report. And now, especially in this day and age, even with artificial intelligence, everything is at your fingertips. And, we as a city, we are, the AI capital of the world. Technology is moving so fast, and it's all happening here. And what happened back then, which I don't want us to repeat the same mistake now, is there wasn't always a direct connection between our educational system and the opportunities that existed right in our backyard, right here in San Francisco. How do we connect the dots between these major companies like a Dreamforce and OpenAI. It's not just about giving money to support the schools, it's about opportunities to allow students to experience what is going on in San Francisco. It's why I started Opportunities for All, the paid internship, where we ask companies, take 5, 10, 12 kids and expose them to what you do so that our children growing up today can have those opportunities. I think the biggest challenge is technology, but also the biggest opportunity can be technology if it's done right.
And I know that you've invested a tremendous amount in our young people. Can you tell us a little bit more about what your office is doing and how it connects to our schools in terms of improvement?
Well, first of all, because of the generous support of the voters, San Franciscans provide, in this particular budget year, in my budget, there was about $120 million to the school district. Since 2018, there's been about $706 million. And on top of that, what I have done on a personal level is really focus on providing additional resources to help in some times during deficits, which we can't do this time around. And in some cases, when we needed additional support for wellness hubs and making sure that we had mental health services, and also retention bonuses for teachers in some of the most challenging school environments where it was difficult to retain educators. So we've done a lot of above and beyond what we're required to do. And in addition to that, and Maria Sue can talk a lot about this, the amount of resources poured into various nonprofits and supportive organizations that are supposed to be helpful to students. I think there's many layers out there. There's many things that a lot of people are doing. And I think that the challenge we have is the dots don't always connect. And I think we have to get back to connecting the dots, not creating a program just because it sounds good, but who is it actually designed to help? Where's the connection? Are people having conversations with young people to understand, engage their interest, and connecting them directly to the opportunity? So my hope is that we in Department of Children, Youth, and Family, and working with the superintendent, that we can do more of that. Because a lot of times we've been in crisis mode. It's like a pandemic, we have to make change, distance learning, this is happening. Our kids are not smiling. How do we bring joy back to their lives? How do we're responding to things. And now I feel like the tide is changing where we have an opportunity to be a lot more proactive in making sure that we have what's necessary to ensure their success. That's what I'm focused on.
That's great. Alignment is a huge thing, right? So when you are trying to connect the dots, you have to at least start on the same page. And I'm going to go over to the superintendent. So Superintendent Wayne, you've been with us for 18 months now, so congratulations. I know that you've been hosting meetings and you've been having conversations with the community, and you're really starting to think about, what's important and how do you prioritize. You're going to be doing some introductions to the board, and that's coming up around, some of the math and some high school revisions. What is your plan for achieving excellence? And the big question that I think we've all asked ourselves many times over the many decades is the closing of the achievement gap. Like, what does that look like for you? What's your vision?
Yeah, thank you, and good evening, everyone. I'm excited to be here at Lincoln, one of my 17 favorite high schools in the city. And so I think a perfect segue when we talk about alignment and connecting the dots. That's what we've been doing this past year and a half. When I started, appreciated the work we've been doing as a governance team with the Board of Education to establish a clear vision and values, and for me, most importantly, some goals for student outcomes around third grade literacy, 8th grade math, and college and career readiness. And there's nothing revolutionary in establishing goals like that. It's what we're supposed to do as educators. But what's different is it's brought us a level of focus that we haven't had for a while. And a focus on what matters is what students are learning. And so now when we're talking about how are we going to achieve those goals, and like you said, how we're going to make a difference in students' academics. And when we talk about education, even tonight, you've already heard some, we talk about a lot of numbers. We talk about the number of students enrolled in our schools, or how much the budget is, or the number of classroom vacancies we have. But for me, there's one number that really matters. It's the most important number. It's the one that keeps me wakes me up in the morning, keeps me energized to do this work. And that is 1,000. Because 1,000 represents the number of hours we have each year that our students spend in the classroom. And that's the time where we can make a difference. And so we need to be really thinking, if we're going to achieve these goals, how are we ensuring that students are spending that time in an incredibly meaningful way so that they're prepared when they leave us for their future? And so we're doing that in a few ways. We're doing that first just by defining what does good instruction look like, right? One of the neat things about San Francisco is there's so many different communities and so many different schools, but we do want to have some common expectations across our schools. And so we're talking about what does it look like for students to be engaged, to be working on essential content, to demonstrate that they're learning. And so then that actually looks like us going to classrooms together and talking about that. Just this morning, Lincoln High School hosted an instructional rounds where they go to classrooms and look at what's going on and seeing, is it at the standard that we think will help our students achieve excellence? And then we're doing things like looking at our curriculum and the programs that we're offering, and again, making sure that it's clear across the city, what are some key components that students need to learn to be successful? And kind of regardless of where you live, kids need foundational skills to learn how to read. And so we're making sure that that's a priority, and then focusing our professional learning around for teachers around that. So something I'm really excited about that happened this year is we have early release Wednesdays. The parents out here know it because the kids go home a little early and they have to take care of them. And that's time for professional learning. And across 115 schools, often schools had to figure out themselves what they were going to spend their time on. But this year, we're starting district-aligned professional development once a month so that teachers and staff are having the same conversations across the city. So I was really excited last month to go to Chavez and see the materials we've been working on shared at the staff meeting, and the teachers talking about foundational skills and really looking at the standards in kindergarten and first grade about what kids need to know to be able to read. So I think that sense of coherence and alignment and focus is really driving us so we can make sure that students, when they're spending those 1,000 hours in the classroom, that they're engaged and they're getting what they need to be successful.
And does math look the same as literacy? Like, are you doing the same types of observations and bringing in new programming, or thinking about like what it is that's what our kids need in order to excel and exceed?
Exactly. So we're sharing next week our vision for mathematics and talking about the fundamental skills that students need. And it is very similar in the sense that just as we've learned that if a student doesn't leave first grade without knowing phonics and phonemic awareness, just knowing their letters and sounds, they're not going to be successful reading. If students don't have a sense of numbers and how they work and computation, when they get to second, third grade, we're already needing to play catch up. And so we want to make sure that they understand that. And that we're laying the foundation for the kind of critical thinking and problem solving that our students need. And also we learned a lot going through a curriculum audit around literacy, and we're doing the same thing in math to be able to bring in new materials that really will focus on grade level standards and have some of the best practices that we know will help our students.
Great, thank you. Maria Sue. So Maria and I used to work together for many, many years. She was my partner in many new programs, opening offices, thinking about what it is that our kids need. And it's such a treat to be able to talk to you in this way now. So those Wednesdays that our kids got out early, my two kids who were at Dolores Huerta, James Lick, and then at Lowell ended up on Wednesdays roaming around unless we had great after-school programming. And so, Maria, not everybody knows that this department exists and that it's, led by our mayor, and you dole out significant amount of funding. Not only that comes from the city's budgets through normal channels, but all of the different propositions and measures that we've been able to pass as voters. So can you tell a little bit about what it is that DCYF does and how do you partner with the school district?
Thank you, Hydra. Good evening, everyone. My name, again, is Maria Sue. It's my pleasure to be here. It's wonderful to spend a few hours with you all today, and thank you for sharing a few of your precious hours away from your family to be with us. So as Hydra mentioned, I have the privilege of leading the Department of Children, Youth, and Their Families. And this department was formed in 1991 under the leadership of several key children advocates throughout the city who said and essentially demanded that our city prioritize children and make the commitment to provide funding for long-term sustained programming and services for children, youth, and families in our city. As a result, our department was created through a charter amendment that was placed in the ballot in 1991. It was reauthorized again in 2000, and then it was reauthorized again in 2014. In 2014, when that was reauthorized, it expanded the life and the term of our department, as well as expanded the mandate of our department to serve not only children from birth to 18, but also included our most disconnected young people up to the age of 24. And what that means in layman's term is that I have the privilege to work with the mayor to set priorities for the city in how we want to provide funding to serve and support our children, youth, and families. So for example, we say that we want all of our children, youth, and families to live in safe, nurturing communities. We want all of our children, youth, and families to have access to high-quality programs like health services and mental health services. We believe that if we achieve those two conditions, then our young people will be able to go into our school district and then they will be ready to learn, will be reading at third grade levels and achieving math proficiencies and graduating high school on time, and then be able to transition into productive adulthood. So with all of your support, you are supporting the department to then provide these funds. We work very closely with our school district to ensure that things that we fund are in full alignment with the vision and the goals of the school district and the superintendent. I think the theme we're hearing today is coordination and alignment. And I would also add accountability, because that's what our mayor always tells me. Whenever we're in meetings, she's always asking, what's the number? What's the data? Because that's the way we make good decisions and the right decisions. So if we're not serving our young people, if we're not meeting the needs of families, if we're not doing a good job, then we need to pivot and change and then figure out where the bright spots are so that we can do a good job, so that we can serve you.
Great, thank you, Maria. I want to shift gears a little bit. We had Phil Ting here earlier telling us a little bit about what the budget looking like, will be in the future. Not looking great. The pandemic certainly impacted, the entire state. And so, when we talk about fixing the budget, fixing the budget it's not like it's a car that you can just go and add a few things or, take away a few things and hope that the car runs well. And I know you're both being really thoughtful about what these budgets look like. And there's the blend of some of the funding that helps to augment some of the services that we need in the school district. So Mayor Breed, Prop 13 has done what it's done, and not really sure what we can do on that. The federal government hasn't shown up the way that they should have, could have, still need to, particularly around our special education services. And I remember when I was on the school board, there was a point when it was $6,000 per pupil. $6,000. And I think it's closer to 20 now that our schools are getting. What is the city already doing, and what more do you think the city can or should do? You know, when we talk about going over the requirements, this is that blend, right? This is that blurred line in order to bring more resources to our public schools. And I know you have also been a huge advocate of private funding. You know, you're knocking on doors every day for a variety of different things, and the schools are included in that. But what more do you think we can do to help look at this budget and feel like we're coming into it without, you know, the pain and tears that we always feel?
Well, sadly, Hydra, some of the laws changed in the city through the Board of Supervisors, where I can't necessarily, without their approval, advocate and fundraise for the schools any longer. So I think that's something that could be helpful to change in order to, you know, develop those or maintain those public-private partnerships, because you remember when you worked for Ed Lee, how valuable they were and how Mayor Ed Lee was able to leverage a lot of support that continues, fortunately, to this day with Salesforce, but not in every instance with a number of those other relationships that have been established. I think the public-private partnership could be really helpful if we are able to work together to make something like that happen. I do also, as I said earlier, you know, the city and county of San Francisco provides a lot of resources when you look at other school districts in the state of California in comparison to how generous the city has been over the years because of the voters. It's been significant. In addition to that, I have been very supportive of the school district directly. I mean, I can go down the list of, you know, helping with deficits when in need, providing additional support for wellness hubs and maintaining that support, providing additional teacher bonuses. This was not necessarily in the requirements. It was, this is what will help the school district. And so if we have the resources and can potentially redirect some of those resources, why not make it work for the school district and not try to reinvent the wheel? I think in addition to that, there's about $90 million that comes out of the Department of Children, Youth, and Families for the various beacon centers and programs and other things. In fact, I make sure that the graduation is covered. There's a lot of things we can do as a city, and we do to support the school district. But I definitely think that it would be extremely helpful to do more with the private sector. There's a lot of wealth in the city and a lot of opportunity. And just going back to some of the basics of getting each company to adopt a school, to say, you know, this is my school. I am going to do everything I can to ensure the success of this school, and what is it that we can do to make sure that the students at that school have a connection between what they're trying to learn there and what is possible. Galileo High School, my high school, where I went, is a school of technology now. And the connection to technology in the way that it should be is a little bit more challenged. And so this is where I think this particular public-private partnership could be extremely helpful, especially because right now the school district is dealing with the budget deficit, the city and county is dealing with the budget deficit. In the past, when we were experiencing better times, we would always go out of our way to make sure that we're providing resources to the school district as much as we possibly can. But, you know, our kids should not suffer because we are in the midst of these deficits. The funding and the resources necessary to sustain what is being done should be consistent.
Do we still have our rainy day fund?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. That you know, again, comes managed from the city, and that bailed us out of so many things, particularly, you know, when we wanted to do something better for our teachers. And so that was always our go-to. You know, and I think public-private partnerships are so critical, and it is unfortunate that you don't have the ability to do that anymore, because that really was kind of this. It helped us to leverage, not only on the financial end, but also on the goodwill end. You know, it got people that not so separated from our from our public schools. You know, you didn't have to send your child to a public school in order to support a public school. And I think that's where a lot of those connections came from. Maria, I'm gonna go to you next because I do wanna, just kind of piggyback on what the mayor's already shared, because you do have a lot of control over these measures and propositions that we've had, over the years and that have built up in this, like $90 million is no small drop in the bucket. And you've always been able to manage it very well. And you think about like how it gets distributed across the city. You do all of your, talks in every single neighborhood because every single neighborhood is different. And every single neighborhood needs something different for their families. So you oversee the Student Success Fund, extended school time, which used to be kind of the after school for all, wraparound supports, summer programming. How do we ensure that our students benefit from these, and how it's getting out to the schools, and then how do we ensure quality?
Yeah, the special Q word, quality, and outcomes, right? So yes, we're DCYF, our department is extremely fortunate to be able to oversee these additional dollars in our budget. And as the mayor mentioned, not only do we oversee the Children and Youth Fund, which comes from property tax revenue, it's 4 cents of every $100 of property tax that the city collects. And then we also oversee the newest funding revenue, which is called the Student Success Fund. We also oversee the Free City College funds, as well as provide supports to manage the Public Education and Enrichment Fund. So for anybody out there who's looking at the budget book, you'll see that DCYF, my department, oversees a lot of money. And of course, then the question is, then where do all these dollars go? And how come it's not in schools and programs? Well, actually, all of it goes into schools and programs. We go through a very robust annual needs assessment, which then follows up with a big process of an allocation plan that we do every single 5 years that culminates in a competitive solicitation process. And that's a process where we look for nonprofit agencies to partner with us to provide all of those essential services that working families need, like quality after-school programs, that young people need, like academic supports, teen experiences, workforce experiences, mental health supports, and family supports. So we go through this process so that we can allocate these funds to our nonprofit agencies. We also have another parallel process that we work with other city departments so that we can then partner with them so that we're not duplicating the work. So if we're working with the Department of Public Health, we're not running 2 separate mental health programs. We're actually going to fund one mental health program so that we can increase capacity. If we're working with the Health and Human Services, we're not running multiple programs for foster care children. We're doing it in coordination, in alignment. And then finally, we work very closely with the school district on both a systems level so that we can then say, how many programs are in each of your schools, and how do we ensure that there's coordination among those programs, as well as there's equity among those programs. We want to make sure that the experience that every family has is the same. We don't want one family to go into a program and have this fantastic experience and then realize, oh, that's because they paid extra for that program, as opposed to another program that is free, that's subsidized by the city. So we work very closely with the school district to make sure that we coordinate around that. We also work very closely with the school district to ensure that we provide additional supports for when there are situations of emergency. So for example, if there are situations where there's, say, a violent incident that happens. We then work with the school district and our city partners to come together to alert the city family and to bring in our CBO partners so that we can then have immediate response to provide supports to the school as well as to the families. All of that has to be done through a lens of equity, has to be done in a way that has accountability and quality. So we use a state-developed quality assessment tool where we go in and evaluate all of our nonprofit agencies to make sure that they meet the standards as well as the outcomes that we're looking for.
It warms my heart that you're still, deeply engaged and connected to the school district the way that you are, because that doesn't happen, as you were saying, Madam Mayor, in other places. Okay, so I'm glad you're holding the mic, Superintendent.
and before-
you want to piggyback on that first?
I do.
Yeah.
No, but before you ask your next question, I do want to emphasize what you're hearing, that how important that level of coordination is to supporting our students. And I remember when I think even before starting, went to Maria's office and saw the outcomes that they're working towards on the wall, and said, this is what we need to have in the district. And now we have our own outcomes on the wall, and we're working together to make that happen. And so when we talk about the Student Success Fund, what I appreciate is the partnership on how that's going to work in our schools. It can be very tempting for the city to say, well, here's what we need. But the conversation has been more, what do your schools need? And so we have a community schools framework. So rather than saying, well, we need a new framework for the Student Success Fund, we're using that framework to inform the work. Or we have student outcomes. So using that, making sure the plans are aligned to our student outcomes. And then similarly, when there have been issues, just the level of coordination and support that's available beyond the dollars is so critical. And Maria spoke to the fact that if there's a student safety issue, if there's an atmospheric river, people might remember that, we're talking with city departments. And then it's shifted to where we're being proactive as well. So as we started the school year, we wanted to make sure the school year started off well, and city department leaders, following the chief of staff, came together with us to make sure we're talking about transportation and we're talking about student safety before school starts. So I just want to emphasize how important that level of coordination is, because we're not going to achieve those outcomes just by ourselves. We need to work together as a community to make it happen.
Yeah, I remember a time when we wanted to change the bell system in the high schools. And it brought out, we had to talk to MTA because then it would change all the bus routes, and then we had to, it was just very complex because we're all so tied together, throughout the city. I want you to keep the mic going because I want to ask you about the budget and the school district. So how bad is it, and how did we get here?
When we talk about the budget, we are talking and have started a conversation at the beginning of this year around resource alignment. And I say that not to be euphemistic about what we need to do, but to be very clear that the question is, how are we using our resources to support what I said is the most important number, the 1,000 hours of what's happening in the classroom. And, and as you heard Assemblymember Ting shared, on one hand, the resources that school districts have been given across the state have significantly increased. The need has increased as well. And then particularly from the pandemic, we saw there were a lot of needs, and we received support that was, though in the end, one-time support that we got. And so where we are as a district is currently, we did just, it's a priority to make sure if we're going to invest in those 1,000 hours, we need to invest in the adults who are with our kids during that 1,000 hours, and that's our teachers, our paraeducators, our staffs in the school. So we did just reach an agreement to significantly increase salaries to support recruitment and retention. And because of the one-time funds, because of the support of the city, we have money kind of in the bank, the reserve, to be able to afford this for now. And we need to have the conversation long-term, though, how do we want to use our resources? And, where and how did we get here? We're here because we're facing what districts across the country are facing. I was just at the Council of Great City Schools with other districts from all the major areas, and the conversation is so similar. And I share that not just to say maybe misery loves company, but to share that we're talking together about how we're going to ensure their stability moving forward. And the conversation is because the changes that are happening in our cities, not just the fact that there's one-time funds from the federal government, but the fact that there are fewer kids being born, that there are fewer students in the city. And so we're a city that, even 5 years ago was educating over 50,000 students, that now we have 49,000 students that we're educating. And we haven't asked the question, how do we do that effectively with our resources for our current student population? And so that's the question we're asking about around resource alignment. And so that's the conversations we're going to be having this year to see, okay, how do we use those limited resources to make sure it's working towards our students, our student outcomes, while of course balancing the budget, but keeping in mind that it's for that reason. It's so that we can support student learning. And I am confident that we do get additional support from the city, and with the partnerships that we have, that we're going to be able to achieve our goals while still doing it in a fiscally responsible way.
And then how do you keep those dollars as close to the students as possible as you're making these decisions?
And so, I think we're looking at where our expenditures are, and when we talk about like aligning our resources and prioritizing them, then it is making sure that they are targeted towards the schools with a few considerations. One, that they're targeted towards programs and activities that we see where there's success, and that they're supporting our goals. Something I say when we talk about it, our budget and what we're doing, we can do anything, but we can't do everything. So what are the things that we need to do that we know will be successful? So you heard me talk about some like professional learning and the kind of professional development support and the curriculum materials that our students need. We're also looking at how we're organized as a district in our central office and making sure that our central office is there in support of schools, because again, that's where our students are learning. And so I go back to my days when I was a school supervisor, a decade ago in San Francisco, and I was out in schools all the time. If we're not being responsive to school needs at the central office, then we're not using our resources well. We need to consider how we're doing them. And so it's looking at, so we've identified kind of 4 key levers. So it's looking at our central office and the services that we provide. It's looking at our school staffing model and how we're supporting the staff at schools. It's looking at our programs and how effective are those programs. And then it's looking overall at our school portfolio and how we use our real estate and our facilities, and making sure that we have the schools that we need to best serve our students.
And you just said that the reserves will be helpful for the contract that was just agreed to. And thank you, by the way, for making that happen for our teachers who are well deserving of what they, for that increase, and probably and then some. How do you take that into account for the budget in the future? Like how are you accounting for that?
Right, so then that's where, as we do our budget planning for next year, and beyond, we need to make sure that we're not spending more than we're bringing in. And so that's what we're doing right now, is making sure that that matches up, and as the mayor said, that there's not a structural deficit, but that in an ongoing way, we are able to afford the commitments that we've made.
Okay, great. Madam Mayor, I wanted to, before we go into the questions from the audience and some that have been submitted in. When you think about what the future for our young people looks like, and this big shift you've seen over this last 4 or 5 years, and how impactful that's been in your own thinking, and how you're bringing the city to its next level. And you made several announcements today about Dreamforce coming back. We're going to have the 2025 NBA All-Stars coming. There's a lot of really exciting things that are happening in the city. What does that mean for you when you think about when you think about our young people? Because, like even in the back, I hear you, like, tell me about what you're doing. Do you go to school here? How are you doing? Yeah, you've engaged in every space I've seen you in when we've had young people around. So I know you think about this often, but what does that mean for you?
Well, what it means for me, it goes back to what I said in the beginning, is the connection between our kids who are in our school system and opportunities for them to experience what is happening in San Francisco, whether they want to start their own company or they want to be a part of something that exists. And talking to Elaine back there with the kids who did the tech, they're in a class to do tech here, and the first thing I thought about are the children, some of the first kids we hired for Opportunities for All, who worked on the Matrix movie set, who worked on Nash Bridges when they tried to relaunch a pilot. They built sets, they did camera work, they had a direct connection with folks who are in the film industry, so much so that there's one kid in particular that ended up moving to Los Angeles to work in the industry. There were a number of kids who worked for Opportunities for All for Airbnb. And they didn't just learn how to code, but some of them learned how to design the sets and to do photography and to work in the HR department and what that means to develop payroll. And we have these amazing opportunities. And what I see for the future of kids in San Francisco is trying to make a connection to those opportunities. Some kids may, just be self-starters and can make something happen on their own, or they may have support from parents or friends or teachers. And then there's others sometimes that are a little bit more quiet and maybe, I remember this one kid who I was in school with, and I'm gonna be honest, I thought he was a different kind of person than what he was because he never said anything. And then I was the yearbook editor, and someone said, I won't say his name, but someone said, such and such can draw. And I was like, what can he draw? And then I talked to him, gave him an assignment to do the transition pages for the yearbook, and I wanted to see what he was capable of. Those were the best, he just sketched together some things and put together some magic. They're in our yearbook that year. When I graduated, we put those, they were in sort, it was like sports. And then it was a whole thing about sports, and it was really, and I was like, man, this guy is a real artist. He's quiet, but he's a real artist. Can you imagine? I mean, graphic art wasn't a thing I thought about, but in thinking about him and his abilities and what that could lead to and what the possibilities, that is the connection that I want us to be able to make for students in our school system, because I know that anything is possible in this city. This city is a place of creativity, of innovation, of second chances, of opportunities. It's such an amazing city. And I know that if we can do the kind of job we need to do with all the financial resources, with all the various educators and the leadership and the people who care so deeply about our children, that we can actually make those connections to these opportunities. That's my hope and my dream for the future generations of San Franciscans that are growing up in our school system now.
That's great, thank you. Yeah, Superintendent.
No, I just want to second and third that, and just, that's what's so exciting about being in San Francisco. So we're going to be sharing ideas about re-envisioning our high schools, and we've started a program called the Mission Bay Hub. And so it's exactly what the mayor's talking about. Here we have students who get to go spend half their day at UCSF in Mission Bay, right? A world-renowned research institution where scientists are showing them what they do and doctors are showing them what they do. And so one young student was sharing about her experience, and she was telling me first she saw an embolism in person, and I wouldn't even want to watch, and a needle in the chest. And so, and then, and she said she hadn't really thought about what she wanted to do, but now she wants to be a nurse, having had this experience. And that's what's so special about San Francisco and making those connections. That's what we want our kids to leave, learning about their passions, understanding what might be their interests, and that then anything's possible for them.
I've gone to the Mission Hub a couple of times now, and yet another thing that warms my heart, because Gavin Newsom, when he was mayor, he wanted to build the mission-based school. He raised some money from Chuck Feeney, and we just couldn't get it done. We couldn't get it over the finish line. So it's so great. I mean, it's a little bit long time, but it's great to see it get over the finish line, because that's exactly the kinds of schools that we want to see for our kids, or some opportunities for our kids, so that they can be, the next leaders here in the city. We're going to turn it over for some other questions that are not mine. And let's see. Meredith, are you you've got some questions that have come in?
We do.
You want to direct?
Thank you so much already, and we're going to keep the questions coming. We're going to have, so as we mentioned, we had over 200 questions come in. Thank you so much for all of your questions. We did our best to compile them, and we're going to have parent advocates Chanel Blackwell and PTSA president from Lincoln High School, Rex Ridgway, come on up with some of those questions. We'll see how many we can fit in. We're going to encourage the panel to be bold, honest, and brief, so we can try to squeeze in as many of these questions from our audience as possible. So rapid fire, to get as many of them in. I'll leave it to Rex Ridgway. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Two quick fun facts. Lincoln High School is the most requested high school. So I just want to say thank you, Lincoln. Another fun fact. The Forbes magazine 400 Richest People in the United States was just published 2 weeks ago. Of the 400 richest people in the United States, 43 billionaires live in the Bay Area. And of the 43 billionaires that live in the Bay Area, 12 of them live in San Francisco. So we have the money, folks. First question, which is really a follow-up question to one of yours, I can get a more specific answer from Dr. Wayne. So the parents and community members are excited about the historical overdue raise for the teachers and staff. Dr. Wayne, we know this is going to cost $150 million that has to be factored into the budget. So the question is, how is that going to be addressed?
So I shared the 4 areas we're looking at to do that. So let me talk more specifically about staffing, right? We have, we spend over 80% of our budget on staffing. And so really looking to make sure that our staffing is aligned to the students we have, and that, aligned to the students we have and are with the students that we're trying to serve, right? And so that's looking at our school level, making sure we're clear. First of all, what can, across every school, families expect in terms of staffing and the support that they're going to receive, right? It varies a lot by school, but what's the baseline? And so then looking and making sure that we have full classrooms that are also fully staffed. You heard at the beginning, we know we're dealing with classroom vacancies, and we want to make sure that our classrooms are full of students and that they have a teacher in them. And then again, with staffing, we're talking about at the central office, looking at the services that we provide and making sure that those are in the school and that they're effective in supporting our outcomes. And so it is going to be then talking about answering that question of, okay, so what staffing is necessary to meet our outcomes, and how does that get aligned? So what that looks like is right now schools themselves decide how much staff they're going to have. We give the money through what's called a weighted student formula. It's going to be us more saying centrally, what's the baseline staffing that schools need, and then what is additional support for focal students, and what's additional support for key programs that schools have. And so putting that model in place is how we think we can make sure we're meeting our fiscal obligations while more importantly meeting our educational obligations.
And a follow-up, thank you. A quick follow-up question to that regarding money. Everyone knows about the payroll situation. So the question that was sent in, Dr. Wayne, please address what you plan to ensure that the teachers and staff, that they will be paid correctly and on time regarding the Empower.
The fact that we need to applaud that, I recognize is a challenge. And a year ago now, I declared a payroll state of emergency because I saw how many staff were affected by this, and it's just our basic responsibility. We're in a very different place than we were a year ago. We've, I think, moved from a state of emergency to where we're in recovery. And the good news is that on a regular basis, like, we now run payroll and staff gets paid, and we can do that. When there's a change in a staff member situation or other issues, we're dealing with those particulars, and that's still frustrating for our staff and our teachers. So moving forward, we're looking not just at our payroll system, but overall, what is our human resources, budgeting, and accounting systems, and make sure they're highly functioning. So how do we get from recovery to stabilization is the next phase of the work that we're doing. And it's important because teachers need to be focused on that 1,000 hours, not on, is their paycheck correct?
Thank you. Your turn.
Hi, Chanel Blackwell. And what Rex said, we got a lot of money here, so, in this city. Dr. Wayne, a lot of students, parents, and people in our community are frustrated because we still have teachers' vacancies at their schools, including here at Lincoln High School. Can you tell us 3 things you and the staff at the district office are doing to fix this problem?
That's so many questions for the superintendent on an education panel. Yes, it was incredibly frustrating starting the year like this, and we can't do that again. And just as I said around the budget, in some things, what we face is typical of what other districts face around a teacher shortage and staffing shortage. But the question I ask myself and our team is, okay, but what can we do here that's different? And so first of all, one of the critical things we need to do is just streamline our hiring processes. We've heard too many stories, and I'm sure people have heard them too, about the hoops that people need to go through to get hired. So we're relooking at our whole process and also the technology that's used, because that's been one of the frustrations with the Empower system that we adopted, and that's going to be revamped for this coming year. So that's number 1. And then number 2, how are we, recruiting and retaining early so that we have teachers in place early? Because the kind of biggest indicator of whether a teacher is going to be successful and whether we're getting the right teachers in the classroom is, there's their education and every other factor, but it's really, are we doing our hiring in April or in August? And so we've said one of our goals is to be fully staffed in August, and to do that, we need to be hiring in April. So being clear about what our vacancies are and getting that hiring done early. And then the other best strategy for recruitment is actually retaining our teachers. We have too much turnover in teachers every year. We're having to hire too many new teachers. And so between the salary increase and recognizing, improving our teachers' working conditions, so again, they're not focused on distractions, but they're able to focus on what's happening in the classroom, is another key area we know we need to do to make sure we keep teachers so we start the year fully staffed.
Thank you. This is for everyone. It's a follow-up. I believe you talked about it, Dr. Wayne, earlier. Do you all support bringing back 8th grade algebra to our middle school? And what are your thoughts on the current ballot measures?
Well, I do, and I support the current ballot measure introduced by Supervisor Joe Longardio to do so. More recently, I think last budget cycle, and maybe Maria can correct me if I'm wrong, there was a very extensive math program that used a certain level of studies in our school system, in our elementary schools, that our office also funded to support our children. I think, we need to make sure, not all kids learn at the same pace. And we need to make sure that, and I know people think equity means everyone kind of goes at the same speed, but for me, I can tell you, I struggled in 9th grade algebra, where I had to take pre-algebra, and I wouldn't have wanted to be in algebra and not really understand what was going on. There were some kids who just learned at a different pace, and I think we need to do a better job of meeting kids where they are, making sure that they are able to learn at their pace, and to not, hold any other kid back as a result of that particular situation. So I think we need to do it, and we need to make sure that our kids have every advantage possible in our school system with whatever classes we can provide. But ultimately, I do think we need to really focus on the basics and make sure that we do those very well, whether it's math, reading, and all the different levels and the extracurricular activities, and really make sure that our investments are addressing those particular needs. And 8th grade algebra is, I believe, a very important part of that.
Yeah. Can I just share a little bit? The mayor just brought up the example of the math program that DCYF and the school district worked together on. That was an example of us sharing information, data, looking at the data and saying, oh, this is so interesting. Why is it that this school in this classroom had such a tremendous increase in math comprehension rates? And as we dug deeper, we realized it's because they're using a different type of teaching methodology. Let's figure out why that's the case. And we just kept asking why. And we kept figuring out, digging deeper, and then went to the mayor and said, I think we've got a little bright spot here. Let's figure out what to do here. And we said, well, maybe we could just expand this pilot. So this year in the budget, the mayor and the supervisor put in the budget several $1 million so that we can then take this model at one school to expand it to 4 schools and then see how this grows. Because I do believe quality math education has to be provided across the board, but we need to help our teachers and train them up and give them the resources and the tools to be able to do that.
And what this program is doing, and is one of the key places we need to make significant improvement, is ensure that early on our students are learning math. And as I talked about, that they have those fundamentals down so that when they go to middle school and high school, they're ready to be successful. And so I've shared, for us, the question is not if we're going to offer algebra in 8th grade, but how we're going to offer algebra in 8th grade. And when we had algebra in 8th grade, it was working for some, but not for enough students. And we want to make sure that it's not just about going back to what we were doing before, but figuring out moving forward, how do we give those kids who are ready to accelerate and ready for that opportunity to learn the access to that so they can be successful in middle school and have opportunities in high school? And then how do we make sure that the students maybe who aren't ready are still getting
Why'd you point to me?
You called yourself out. I was just affirming what you said.
But I wasn't ready, so it was true.
But how do we make sure that we're still engaging them in rigorous learning so that they are ready when they're taking algebra? Because we need all our kids taking algebra and higher level math if we're going to meet our goal around college and career readiness.
Thank you.
Okay, Mayor Breed, I know that you have to leave, so this will be the last question to you and any others who would like to chime in. The way I'll frame it is that we know next week the Asian Pacific Economic Conference is coming into San Francisco, and the city is going to do its best to make sure everything is ready to go. So leading into the question is this. Many people submitted questions concerning that there are encampments, drug paraphernalia, trash, and speeding directly in front of our schools and surrounding the schools. And as we're going into next week, we know that the city is going to make a big effort to make sure that the city shines. But when that is over with, we don't want to forget about the fact that our schools continue to need to be a safe place for our kids. So the question is to both, you, of course, Mayor Breed, and of course, anyone else, how is the city and the district working together to ensure that students, families, teachers, and staff are safe in and around the schools?
Well, I appreciate the question, and I just want to push back just a tad bit because I do know that our city struggles with issues around homelessness. And issues around homelessness are different than some of the issues that we've more recently dealt with around public safety in our schools. So I think they're 2 different categories, even though I know recently with a particular Catholic school, it was probably one and the same. Since 2018, we've been able to help get over 10,000 people off the streets of San Francisco who have exited homelessness, not in our shelters, not in our permanently supportive housing, have exited homelessness. We have never even had a point in time count where 10,000 people were counted. In fact, San Francisco was the only city in the Bay Area that even saw any reduction, 15% in unsheltered and 3.5% overall. We still, of course, have problems in certain areas, more so than others. And in fact, many of our teams have been working tirelessly once we had clarity after the court injunction. Once we got more clarity, we have been moving as aggressively as we can in order to get people help and get them housed. It has not been easy, and it's not about cleaning up for APEC. It's about moving forward based on the clear interpretation of the law and not giving people a choice in the matter in some instances. It's been a bit more of a tough love approach, which has been very effective in helping us get people who have been very difficult into housing. And what we've also discovered in some of these encampments is that we are, in some cases, providing housing or providing a shelter bed or some other resources. So it has forced us as a city to get a lot more aggressive than we have in the past to address not just homelessness, but the biggest problem I think that we have right now is the use of drugs, in particular fentanyl, which is a lot more deadlier than what we even dealt with during a global pandemic, with the number of people who are dying from drug overdoses on the streets of San Francisco. And fortunately for us, we are finally getting some help. And I think that's what you see in terms of the difference. We have more capacity with our state and our federal partners, with the California Highway Patrol and with the Drug Enforcement Agency and the U.S. Attorney's Office. And we have a different layer of law enforcement support that has been really pretty amazing in helping us to combat this very overwhelming problem that is having an impact on major cities all over the country. So I think we are starting to see a difference. My hope and my prayer is that these agencies don't go away after APEC. They are making it clear that they are here to work with us and to support us and to help continue down this path of this work and to help us get the job done. Because we have no choice other than to do everything we can to make it less convenient for people to live on our streets and use drug on our streets. And in fact, this city is a city of compassion. This city is a place that provides second chances and opportunities, but we can no longer be a city where anything goes. So I'm committed to doing this work and being as aggressive as I need to in order to get it done. Separately from the safety of students as it relates to our school system, because there have been a number of incidents in the last school year that were very troubling, including some that happened here at Lincoln and Francisco and Mission and other schools around the city. And Maria Sue talked about this earlier, because as soon as I find out about one of these incidents, it doesn't necessarily come from the police chief or the superintendent or even Maria Sue. I get a call directly from a family member of someone involved or someone who understands the dynamics of what's going on with those various incidents, and they are actively engaged. This is with our street crisis response team and some of our other community folks, because they're trying to prevent a situation from getting worse than what it already had been on a school campus. And so I'm intimately involved in providing the resources necessary to ensure that we are supporting the school district with their public safety plans, and that we're providing the resources and the people necessary to help. But I do think that the school district needs to revisit its policy around the San Francisco Police Department and allowing for an arrangement with the department so that there isn't a question as to whether or not they can enter a school after a significant event that involves violence. I do think that discussion is in order because there's too much confusion as to whether or not they can get involved in these particular cases. I am grateful that there's a lot of proactive work happening now on the ground as we speak with the various families and folks involved, but we had sadly had incidents where people who don't even go to these schools have breached security, specifically in Lincoln, and have harmed students. So we need to make sure that we are doing everything we can to protect our students, and that means opening up the door and finally having the hard conversation about what this means in terms of security, what this means in terms of the San Francisco Police Department, or ambassadors or something that's an alternative. But I know the superintendent has plans around this, and I am happy to continue that working relationship in order to ensure that when kids are in our school system, that they are safe.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. So we're gonna close out, and we've spent the last hour and some change grilling all of you and asking a lot of you. And so in our closing remarks, I want you to see the amazing group of people that are in front of you. There's a couple of hundred of...
We can't really see them.
Yeah, well, we could turn on the lights and then we could see them. But there's a couple of hundred of teachers and parents and students and community members that rely on you, Madam Mayor, as your constituents, and you're educating their children, and Maria, they're using your services. What would you like to ask them to be able to do and in order to support the continued work that you're doing for our kids?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for giving us, once again, an hour of your time or some change. So once again, today, my theme is accountability and coordination. So I ask everyone to hold me accountable when we say that we're going to allocate our funds to serve young people. If that's not happening, let me know. You can find me on our website. Let me know. And then also, I'm going to ask you to stay engaged, to be a part of your school site council, to join your neighborhood associations, because with more people together, we can actually make those changes that we all want for our children and family. I live in the city too, and I also want to make sure that my children grow up in a safe environment, that they can take Muni and to and from their schools, and they can go to their parks and really enjoy all the wonderful things of the city. So thank you so much.
All right, thank you, Maria. Superintendent. You can applaud for that, yeah. And I'll give you her direct line later.
I think everybody here already has my direct line, no, you've heard us talk a lot about partnership tonight, in partnership with the district and city. But the most important partnership is with our families, because it's your children that we're serving. And for me, partnership really is a two-way street. And for us, I know we're working on communication and being able to share what we're doing and what our challenges are and where we could use support. And I think for you, asking that you continue to ask questions like you are. There's so much information and sometimes misinformation about what's happening in our schools. And so the opportunity to just have you ask questions and have that dialogue is important. And then the partnership, it does look like stepping up and helping in our schools. Like, we love having families there. And whether it's helping with events and making sure students are safe, or I love seeing families out for Halloween, but also in the classroom helping out. Like, that kind of partnership is key for us to be successful. So I think the communication and dialogue, and then just showing up and working with us, I know we can meet those goals we have for our students.
Great. Thanks so much, Superintendent. Madam Mayor, we'll close you.
Thank
Close
you.
us out.
Applause.
You can clap for the superintendent too. You don't hear that often. Give him a big round of applause, would you? He doesn't hear it often.
They're like, okay, Hydra. I would say, I know we have parents here, we have students, we have educators, and so many of you are here tonight because you care, because in some capacity or another, you are involved in supporting kids, supporting your kids, and in some cases, supporting kids that are not yours. And I think that is one of the the best things that anyone can do is take the time to be more engaged, not just with your child, but with other people's children too. Because I think, one of the things, and I used to work with kids at the African American Art and Culture Complex, just the amount of support and attention that they needed in order to prevent them, in some cases, from doing things that they shouldn't be doing. The amount of time and resources that me and my team at the center had to pour into so many young people, I can only imagine, what happens at schools and also what may not be happening at the home. And so I think we have to start thinking about that, because we're fortunate enough in some instances to have very actively engaged parents and have educators who are really focused on kids. But I think it's those young people that we may not be paying attention to, that we need to ensure that we are trying to make sure that there's something for everyone. It may not be the same thing. Someone may excel at being an artist, someone may excel at being a mathematician, someone may excel at being, the person who creates an open AI and all of those things. And what I want us to be able to do as a city is get back to the basics of supporting children in San Francisco, and all of us doing a small part in some way to make sure that we are uplifting our children, we're uplifting other people's children, and we're really getting back to some of the basics here in the city.
Great, thank you. Thank you so much, Madam Mayor. So we hope tonight was insightful and that you were able to take a couple of nuggets out of all of three of these amazing leaders who are really diving in deep with our public schools and ensuring that our kids have every opportunity they have possible. I want to thank the Parent Coalition for having us. Personally, I want to just say thank you so much for allowing me to be back on this stage. It's been a long time. And again, I'm glad I'm on this side and not that side, because I see a very, you never really step away from the public schools. You never really step away from the needs of the city, and you never really step away from wanting to support the leaders that are making things happen. So thank you for the privilege of allowing me to have this dialogue with you. Thank you all for coming out tonight. And to the Parent Coalition, just again, for really bringing us all together to have a conversation that was so critical. There are so many questions I know that people have, and there's so many topics to discuss. And so this, I hope, will be the first of many that you'll be able to pull together for more of our families to join. Thank you so much for coming out this evening. What an honor.
Thank you so much. Yes, and there'll be an opportunity next Tuesday at a board meeting. And this is really special for me. Thank you so much, Madam Mayor. I know you need to go. Personally, for me, I'm a graduate from WASH. So WASH, I get to train the fellows of the Opportunities for All program through my professional hat as a graduate of WASH, right? So looking out for Superintendent and we're wishing that you do well for our students. And then for Maria Sue, I've been part of those youth program quality assessment tool assessments. And so it's a privilege to be up here with my board member hat on with the San Francisco Parent Coalition to host this tonight. First off, you all deserve your own round of applause for taking time with us tonight out of your busy schedules. I know, once again, you're here for yourselves, your community, our young people. So thank you for the panelists. San Francisco kids, they can't wait for adults to get it right. And so we as San Francisco Parent Coalition want to make sure that, we're able to continue to be involved. Your voice matters. It's a plug for school board meeting next Tuesday. We will be there. So we hope that you join us in continuing to make your voice heard for young people. The last couple of announcements is, once again, shout out to Lincoln High School Principal Belisi. Thank you so much. Someone that we missed earlier for a shout out, Commissioner Fisher. I know you're out there as well. Thank you, Commissioner Fisher, for being here. And then the last update is next Thursday as well. We have a lunchtime Zoom for the SF Parent Coalition with SFUSD Ed Services Leadership Team with math and reading updates. So you can find out more at sfparents.org or by emailing us at hello@sfparents.org. Other than that, thank you so much. Be safe out there. Wish you a great rest of the week. Thank you again.